to me, there's a big difference between what I call human beings and humans being, in that one is latent, things happen, and one is potent, they happen to things. And I'm definitely a human's being. And beyond latent and potent, there's the third of the triumvirate, and that is not the latent or the potent, but the intent, not the intention, because intention is just that everyone has intentions, but to hold an intent, to magnetize an action or methodology, a pattern of behavior. That is where you can dance with the moment of now and create something novel and imaginal and creative. So to me, there's an element of magic with that.
Welcome back to the Consciousness of the Way. I've been looking forward to this conversation. I honestly feel like we're just dear friends having a cup of char and a few scones before a tennis match. I want to welcome to the podcast a world-renowned astrologer, Steve Judd. How are you, my dear friend?
I'm still alive, thriving, dribbling a bit manic, but I'm great.
Now, this has just been very, as you come up in the ranks, my lad, you realize, for me, being in this space for over 30 years, I've watched things progress and expand. And the value of astrology, perhaps in this landscape, has been very much diminished. And now all of a sudden it's got a resurgence. There's been a huge value that's been added to within a community, spiritual, like-mind physicists, scientists, theorists, whatever. They're starting to understand the power of this ancient technique or tool or method. How would you describe it? Let's go right into it.
Well, first of all, astrology is the second most commonly researched thing on the internet. And we all know what the first one is, so we won't go there. And astrology has survived and thrived every culture, religion, dogma, theology, political system for 10,000 years. There's been many, many attempts to eradicate it, and it's always survived. So astrology has been really with us since basically some hominid stood up straight and got off its knuckles on the East African plain and went, "Oh, look at that, will you? Can't understand that. Right, let's make stories, let's make legends, let's make myth." And that's how it started. You know, there's this thing about, I did an interview earlier today with a Saudi magazine, and they said, "What's the real value of astrology in today's world?" And I said, the single best thing you can do is go out under the sky at night, take your shoes and socks off and stand on the earth, on the sand, on the grass, wherever, but put your head up and look at the stars, because you're grounding yourself and looking up to the stars. And humanity is the interface between the heavens and the earth. And to quote Terence McKenna, we're unlike any other species that's ever existed on this planet. There's never been humanity is different to any other form of biological system that's preceded it. So we must be the response to some type of dwell point or attractor that lies ahead in the temporal dimensions. It's like a magnet pulling us forward, and it's getting into an accelerated evolution. And astrology is very much the emerging lingua franca of the emerging consciousness revolution. So it's great. It's a privilege to be an astrologer at this time, especially it's like for the first 30 years, I had people going, "You don't believe in that old crap, do you?" And now they're going, "Oh, yeah, all right. How much do you charge?"
I mean, I love it. I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with Taoism, but we've had an intimate relationship with the universe since the beginning of, any thought or channeled idea of Taoism in of itself from a Taoist canon that goes back thousands of years. So this understanding of the humanness and its relationship with the universe is truly one. and that whispers of the universe indicate sort of at a divinity level, this spark of desire that enters into the humanness. And then, of course, you create from that. So it's sort of like, where do you go?
I kind of get that, because astrology is very antithetical to religion. Astrologers don't do religion. But I have a brilliant relationship with spirit, with the divine. Or I say to my clients, you've got to have a good relationship with divine, however you choose to see the divine as being. The more you limit it, the more you restrict it, the more you just accept it as being there. Whether you call it God, Allah, Buddha, the universe, I call it the upstairs department, call it what you like, as long as you've still got it, then you'll always be guided.
Yeah. We refer to this type of stuff like evidence, which is what I think you guys are picking up a lot of momentum, especially now in this contemporary awareness of spirituality. They are starting to put the pieces together going, well, this old clunky idea of processing information is actually cutting edge and the most advanced technology in relation to a certainty, creating an impermanence to a permanence from something that would be just a diluted state. So you can get much more insight into what is the possibility of reality through this ancient technique.
Very much so. Very much so. At the end of the day, it's all down to perception. It's one of the oldest tenets of astrology is that the planets impel, they don't compel. And there's many people will say, but is it fate and destiny, or is it free will and self-determination? And I say to them, well, that's up to you. Because I'm essentially a free will astrologer. I don't work with fate or destiny. There's nothing in my way of working and belief. There's nothing cast in stone. The planet will push you towards a certain path of action, and they'll certainly push you towards the best timings to be successful in those actions, but they don't make you do it. You can choose to say no. And then you'll just carry on as per normal, except that you'll have missed opportunities which may or may not come again.
I love that because I always remind people, if you come from biology, neurology, astrology, physiology, psychology, you're limited. You are giving the very access that is necessary to have a self-realization, because the now moment is really the only permanence, and it's only now. And so what's potential is generated by the seeker to the knower through experiential moments. So if you're riding that wave, go ahead.
I have to tell you, Sam, I had a massive breakthrough about 1978. I was a young hippie. I was 23 years old, and I went to see a magic mushroom band called Gong, and they were supported by Here and Now. And I came back to my little one-room bedsit, and I was completely out of it. And I just wrote around the top of the wall, here and now, all the way around the frieze at the top. And then I woke up the next morning and I looked at it and I realized that what I'd actually written was nowhere.
Yeah.
At which point, here and now equals nowhere. I thought, and at some point, something just clicked. And I just thought, it's all relative, down to perception.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it's mind-blowing, the simplicity of what we're speaking of, because I think you probably find this also. Everyone goes, yeah, I got it. Yeah. Oh, you already know that. And they're the very, they're the ones that are completely detached from the ability to obtain or hold that resonance that is required for that now moment. Yeah.
I really like etymology, the study of the roots of words and the way that words are spoken. And we've lost touch with the deep meaning of so many of our words. For example, the word recreation. We see it as pleasure and fun, But if you look at its true meaning, it's recreation, constantly reinventing the moment, living in the moment now. Because as you said, that's all there is. How is it? Does it go? It goes, the past is history, the future is a mystery, but this moment is a little precious gift in time. That's why it's called the present. I forget who it was who said that, but it's a beautiful one.
Oh, you had me at hello, my dear friend. You had me at hello, because this is very much the deep roots of a Taoist path of alchemy. So yes, of course, I'm a priest in 2 lineages of Taoism. That's fantastic. There's ritual and there's the idea of religion, but religion in of itself is putting together the pieces. We refer to it as the dialogue to the monologue. So the dialogue is with all the relevant gods that hold that resonance, that mold and mesh this fabric of reality that we call the primordial mother. And then you access that monologue, which is what someone might call 0 point, scalar wave, unity, universe, Tao, Buddha, God. But the evidence must be now. And this is where I'm a Pepsi challenge guy from the 80s. I need to see it. I'll take the Pepsi taste test with anyone. Show me what it is that you have acquired that can make me a believer to a knower through the experience.
But here I go into the kind of Zen thing where I go, I don't need to convert anyone. I know it works. And when other people come to me and go, yeah, but there's so many people who disagree with this or who challenge this viewpoint. And I'm going, yeah, one planet, 8 billion different worlds.
Oh, yeah.
No. Perception.
Oh, no. I agree with you 100%. It's just when you are on the journey from a seeker to a knower, you're introspective, analytical, you're a humanist, your human condition creates the boundaries. Then you come across someone like yourself that has wisdom teaching that gives them something that is outside of their boundary of reality, and they go, holy shit, I didn't think this was possible. I didn't know that if I follow this path the way that you've described, magical, mystical things could happen. Furthermore, if I listen to this information, I apply the template to my own path, and you're going to end up having me back on your doorstep going, how the hell did you know that? Because that's the mystery and magic of this, right?
They keep coming back. They keep coming back. You said this would happen, and it did. How did you do that? I don't remember saying that. Did I say that? I don't remember a thing. It's in the moments.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, it's all down to what I call, quite simply, pattern recognition. I just see the patterns, and something clicks inside. The patterns go in, down the back, out, down the backbone, up the front, out the mouth, and they tend to bypass the front brain.
Yeah.
And I don't really know what it is I'm about to say, and that's when I know it's at its best. And it's not channeling or mediumship. I choose to say that it's astrology talking with me, in me, through me. Because to me, astrology it's not an inert, objective art stroke science. It has valence and life force.
Yeah.
That's why I call astrology a she.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Amen to that, brother. Because, that's what we refer to as the primordial mother. That is what we call the Fajun, the substance. So
this is why I wanted to work with you, because as soon as I saw you were a Taoist, I thought, okay, Taoism, that's the mystical side of Taoism. And it's probably a lot more real than Taoism because it's rooted in not the unknown, but the unknowable. And it's just about being in the moment as far as my limited awareness of it goes.
Yeah.
And making the most of every moment. And there, I think Taoism and astrology have similarities. So,
Oh, I agree with you. It's kind of like if I gave you a crash course of what Taoism is, it's summarized like this. You have your attention, which is a commodity that's the most valuable currency in this reality. you're looking at the creation of all things. If it's dielectric, it comes from that relationship of magnetism, which is the pulse of this reality. That's the fabric. And you create wave, which is the electric potential that has vibration, frequency, and then resonance. And from that, there is creation. So you can be in this now moment, and the probability and potential can change with your attention intention. So you can have that energy come in, and it can be formed and can be created and altered. And that's part of the deeper understanding of feng shui. Furthermore, when I teach people body dowsing, we are going deep into power centers, vortices, grid lines, and that's pretty much how we start to get into the grassroots of Taoist magic.
Yeah. A number of my clients, especially those in Singapore, are doing a big thing called body talk, which is a mixture of spirituality, massage, and astrology. And you used a great word there, Yuli, when you talked about potential. To me, there's a big difference between what I call human beings and humans being, in that one is latent, things happen, and one is potent, they happen to things. And I'm definitely a human's being. And beyond latent and potent, there's the third of the triumvirate, and that is not the latent or the potent, but the intent, not the intention, because intention is just that everyone has intentions, but to hold an intent, to magnetize an action or methodology, a pattern of behavior. That is where you can dance with the moment of now and create something novel and imaginal and creative. So to me, there's an element of magic with that. And that's a word I only use sparingly.
Well, that's that symbiosis that we refer to. So you create from the primordial mother, you lay that cloth down within this reality, and you're carving from it what my dear friends would call, the Buddhist monks, dukkha, distortion. It's all has potential, and it has a different profile, just like the universe has a different vibratory frequential profile. As everything aligns, then that energy is then ushered into a certain path that you can create from that if you choose to, but it also starts from within you. So when we look at reality, it's basically a bellows. We refer to it as a bellows. You are contracting and expanding at the same time. You're all things and nothing at the same time. Your mission, if you choose to accept it, Ethan Hunt, is to find that center point, that vesica we refer to as the Wu Ji, which is the primordial mother. And then that's where that secret source you're talking about, that magnetism, that magnetic potential that is within everything, that is where we refer to that resonance. So through the alchemical process, we cultivate to generate what we call Wu Wei, effortless action, effortless effort. It's serendipitous, synchronistic. It's in some ways syncretism in of itself, understanding that everything is here and now, and you hold that resonance, and oh yes, it will be yours. Oh yes, it will, copper. Manifestation, magic, healing.
Yeah. Thing is, these are lovely concepts, and the philosophy and the psychology behind them is unshakable. But then you've got to translate this into common parlance so that the people out there can still go and earn their money and eat their food and live in a world that they recognize without shocking them too much, because you can't just change everything overnight. Although at this time, everything is changing overnight. Every day we wake up, the world's different.
Well, that's the potential of the bellows, right? So we come to completion and then creation. That's happening always. So you have an opportunity to enter into that fluidity, and that can be a permanence that would be an impermanence to most people, but you must be able to cultivate it. That's where you get into the deeper.
It can't be just entering into that blissful state. There has to be still, once you reach that point, the potential for evolution, because without change, you get entropy, which leads to decay.
Right. Well, when we talk about the primordial mother. That's the magnetism. That's the substance. When someone says, I come from love, oh, that's limited at best. That's just one facet. That's why most people don't materialize their reality, because love is one facet of the diamond of perfection. When you are whole, and I've witnessed in my over 30 years, any physical healing you can imagine, I've seen it. Bones fuse, gashes seal, tumors disappear, gangrenous flesh turn back to pink in color. In 40 minutes, that was an overhaul. I've seen it all. People come to me for, my grandma's in a coma, she's going to die tomorrow, and I'm that cleaner from like Pulp Fiction that goes, actually having a conversation with her, that's not going to transpire. And then next minute she comes back, vitals, everything is cool. This is a resonance. When you bring someone back to whole, you're bringing them back to that fabric that everything was created from. That's how miracles are created. But that doesn't require you. This is where people get caught up in the finite mind, the bankrupt intellect, and they assume that that is necessary for them to hold that resonance. They can maintain it. I mean, I have the same personality. I like chocolate bonbons, driving my side-by-side in the desert 100 miles an hour, and unfortunately, I subscribe to Netflix. That is my personality, but that's never required to witness this resonance that you can create yourself. Does that make sense?
I like living in this three-dimensional reality.
Right.
At the same time, one of the things I've really learned is that there is no such thing as death. There's just a transcendence of consciousness.
Oh, yeah.
Just from one dimension to another. So I'm not, death in itself, as we're led to understand it, doesn't scare me at all. I'm quite looking forward to it. I'm not in a rush, you understand.
Easy now, easy.
It doesn't worry me at all. The method of it might be a bit shaky, but the actual the transition from one form of consciousness to another is something I'm quite looking forward to, because I know that all my mates will be on the other side to help me, and there'll be a party waiting for me. So,
yeah. I mean, that's
if I'm killing myself, then at least I'm having a good time doing so.
Well, and that's it. You know, that mortality is real for any seeker. So, you know, part of the whole Taoist alchemy model is to take immortality and materialize or crystallize it into this material state. So this is where you get serendipitous, synchronistic moments of evolution.
This is where I differ from most astrologers, because most astrologers, whether they're Eastern or Western, will talk about points in the horoscope that point to karma and reincarnation and words like this, which I personally don't have any dealing with. To me, those points don't talk. That's just another form of religious guilt tripping. To me, it's instead there's words like mission statement, reason why you volunteered to come to planet Earth in the first place, and purpose. So, for example, when I see people like the Pope who's just died, he had a glorious death. At the moment of his death, the moon and Pluto were exactly together, exactly overhead the Vatican at the moment he died. That is a perfect death. He did what he came here to do. And a similar chart with the Queen Elizabeth II of England. She died at just the right time. She had a graceful exit. So these are people that I wouldn't say I aspire to them, but I respect them. Whether I like them or not is irrelevant, but I respect them for the good they did in their lives. They left this place better than when they entered.
Yeah.
Role models. Yeah.
I mean, the death of in itself, people throw away. A lot of things in this reality are broken words in you know, contemplation and just conceptual integration into something that's never materialized, and that to me goes beyond. So when you're thinking, you're not knowing. When you're knowing, you're feeling. The feeling is evidence of something that is real to the experiencer, and that is tremendously important for a belief system to go to a knowing, and that's where it gets corrupted, because you're crossing over. If your belief system is continually met with the same deficient frequency that you keep perpetuating and growing like in a petri dish, you will have an unenchanted, miserable existence because that's your wish. Your wish is my command. The universe doesn't have a moral compass, which people seem to not get that message.
If you believe anything's strong enough, then anything outside that belief can't be true.
Right, right.
And then you've got problems.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Besides that, the universe does have a cosmic joker attitude occasionally. It's always going to be something that's going to trip you up somewhere.
Yeah.
And yeah, I kind of like that. It's kind of like what the American Indians would call coyote medicine. So yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I mean, my teacher, I personally channel my teacher I have for over 30 years, Lao Tzu, who's the creator of what some people would call a mystery unraveling within the Tao Te Ching. I transcribed a new version of the Tao Te Ching just last year through his teachings. And it took me about an hour, 3 hours. And this is a very interesting thing because you get insight. And most people refer to that information as something potent because it's a living scripture, just like any scripture is. Once you assign that resonance, whether it's the Bible, the Quran, the Kabbalah, it will evoke something within the seeker that helps them return to a knowing of their own experience. I think that's most important.
Agreed. As you know, I'm doing a gig in about a week and a half's time.
Mm-hmm.
And when we set it, it's called Shifts Happen. It's a direct play on words because I looked at my ephemeris, the timetable of planetary movements. I looked at the ephemeris about a year ago and I thought, whoa, March, April next year is going to be really, really batshit crazy. So, right, let's have a conference at the start of May. So I set it all up and I deliberately set it up so that it wasn't going to be your normal astrological conference where you've got a bunch of learned and wise astrologers on the stage lecturing to the students. Instead, it's immersive and integrated, where the astrologers will sit around in different tables, they'll eat and get drunk with the students. And to my amazement and pleasure, the people coming, we've got about 100 people coming, 120 people from 33 different countries, at least 6 different religions. So to me, the people who are either practicing or studying astrology, I consider them not exclusively, but I consider them to be intelligentsia, because they have a different perspective and worldview. So I'm quite looking forward to this because I know that when I'm going to be sat with Buddhists and Muslim and Jewish people and, believe it or not, Catholics, and all in the same room, and we're all going to be talking astrology as opposed to anything else, it should be a really fertile, creative space. So yeah, just plug in that. Shifts happen for 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th of May near London.
Excellent.
We're streaming it. We've got loads of streaming tickets available. Residential tickets are basically sold out, but we're streaming it to the world. So yeah, at Steve Judd Astrology on Instagram and YouTube.
And we'll put a link in here too if you'd like me to. I'll put a link.
Oh, I'd love to. I'll send you some socials straight after this.
Yeah. You know, I mean, these are the types of things where convergence of what we would say is sort of like oil and vinegar, oil and water, but it's actually not. This is what we refer to as that unification. Once you merge yin and yang, you create. It's a wholeness. It's an absolute wholeness.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this because astrology it's been my life. You know, I picked up my first astrology book in 1977. I was 21 years old at that time. I had a Mohican and I was going to see the Sex Pistols and the Ramones. And then I found this astrology book and I just thought, numbers, pattern recognition. That means something. And that's how it started for me. The idea of seeing patterns in the sky and relating them to patterns on the ground in terms of old architecture and modern architecture. Fascinating. Just, it's been my life's work.
Well,
40 years now.
Very potent. Very potent. And of course you see evidence. That's why you continue the path.
Well, yes, I have a logical mathematical mind. And the reason I do astrology as opposed to tarot reading or numerology or channeling or tea leaves is because astrology has a mathematical and geometric core, whilst at the same time you can't do it if you don't also embrace the ideas of psychology and intuition. So it's a true blend of science and art in a way that very few other things are.
Intellect and intuitive, but you have to meet that, right? That crossover is what we refer to as that electric potential between yin and yang. And most people tend to get a bite of the spiritual dragon, and they get an insight where I refer to it as they're misaligned, and then they're realigned for a fraction of a second, and I want more of that. And they kind of train it.
By the time you know it, you've forgotten it. But
Right.
The body remembers.
Right.
It's like every 6 weeks or so, I get a flying dream. And I wake up in the morning and go, oh, that was lovely. I was going at 10,000 miles an hour, 6 inches above the ground. And then I fall out of bed or something, and I have to come back down to earth. But I love that moment where you're in touch with something a bit more primal and basic, but still magical and relevant. Yeah. So long may it run. This is why I'm so pleased I live in England, because we still have some of the old magic of thousands of years ago here. I mean, there's more stone circles in Britain than in the rest of the world put together. And more than 75% of the crop circles in the world happen in Britain. So there's something still about these islands that has a charm. If you can hear a noise squawk, I've got peacocks in my garden, they're squawking away. There's something about this country that has a charm that to me is, to say it's magical is to not do it justice. It's more than that. The word doesn't really exist. You can only live in that field. You can't describe. As soon as you describe it, it goes away. So
that's the impermanence.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But capturing that is still an available option if you understand the mechanisms. I mean, within Taoist metaphysics, it's about harnessing that potential, crystallizing it, saturating the physical flesh, and accessing the 0.07 millivolts of electric potential. And then you become Imperium, Dominion, Maestro to this avatar. And then you start harnessing that. And then things supernatural, paranormal, supernormal, superhuman become realized. And that only comes from evidence.
And then people start looking at you and go, be careful about him. He's weird. He's a witch. Be careful around. Don't go near him. And then 6 weeks later, oh my God, shit's happened. What do we do? Steve, can you help? Oh, thank you. You're amazing. You're brilliant. Thank you so much for your help. And 6 weeks later, be careful about him. He's a witch.
Right. Right. That's the symbiosis, right? Because your resonance creates a confronting moment of a converging moment of realization for the individual. They either go in or out of it. They're either inverted or they're admitting this transmission, which we refer to as the yang. And that
they all go away from the readings with an element of being upgraded. And then they forget about it, but they retain 1%. And sometimes that's all that's needed. Just to give them that boost and help them believe in themselves and realize that actually they're not mad, and that what they're thinking and feeling is right, despite what all their relatives and the newspapers and the media and the outside world says. And it's just about encouraging people to believe in themselves.
Right. And that confidence comes from an unshakable, unbreakable, constant that is actually the paradox. So the paradox is that when you want it, it won't appear. When you don't want it, it will appear.
Yeah. Or you can never summon it and you can't make it happen. But when it's necessary, you can suddenly just kind of switch and you're in the field. Because it's always there and you can just sidestep into it and you can be in the field for as long as you need to be, and then you step back out again. And that field it's easy for me to say, but that's the flow. I mean, I can go onto my shortwave radio and I can hear the electrical pulses from Jupiter on my shortwave radio. So I know that if Jupiter's radio waves are hitting my radio, they're hitting me.
Sure.
So it doesn't quite work out how Pluto, which is smaller than our moon and 4 billion miles away, how that has such a great effect, but it does. I've got the statistics to prove it 100 times over. But we're developing more and more interesting ways, especially with the new, not so much the new technologies, but the new ideas of realizing how astrology is working in this world at this time. It's like we're on the cutting edge of a massive breakthrough. And that's what I call the upgrade in consciousness. And that's going to be happening within the next 18 months. This is no longer, I consider that we as a species are now at the end of our training and our apprenticeship, which is why the dinosaurs are struggling so much and so desperate to try and keep their control they've had for many thousands of years over us, whether it's the politicians, the banks, the corporates, the churches. They're desperate now because we're all becoming more self-aware. We're all becoming more conscious. We're all becoming more responsible for ourselves. And we're becoming intelligent. That scares them.
Well, that's the potency of being accountable.
Being accountable.
Being accountable is the suggestibility of the humanists, because if you're emotional, you're suggestible. So that's like a basement level entry for self-realization. I think everyone should have a fundamental understanding of what a trans-hypnotic state of merging conscious and unconscious is. And without that, you really don't get down to the nuts and bolts, because you can enter into basically an indoctrinated cult without your conscious awareness, because it's limited as best, because you know what you know, you don't know what you don't know. So to integrate that fabric to make yourself able to access 100% consciousness from a model that would be simplistic within measuring someone's brainwave, or furthermore, the frequency of the Earth as opposed to the frequency of the sun, the moon, and other planets, that is your specialty, you understand that when you step on planet Earth or wake up, depending upon the circadian rhythm, the general consensus is the Earth puts out a frequency that would be similar to, if not the same as, an alpha theta brainwave. That is potential. But if you meet it with your very limited human conditions, that is a beta brainwave due to the exacerbated past and future that you tend to cultivate as your reality, you will maintain that. You cling to it. So then you fuel it with sugar, alcohol, caffeine, and then you are in the rat in the wheel.
That's why every year, I used to do it to an excess, but now I just do it once a year. I take psilocybin fresh from the ground, because that's like, in England, we have a system called an MOT, Ministry of Transport, where you take your car in once a year to check it's still working legally. I do that with my brain by taking psilocybin once a year, because it's not illegal to take it in this country if you eat it while it's fresh. Well, if you dry it, it's a drug and you can get in trouble. But when it's fresh, you don't. So,
well, psychonauts across the globe that I've spoken to, and understanding that meshing and entering into the accessibility of DMT and what that potential creates. Personally, I teach people how to do that within themselves. Yet an external charge is always a nice little lick and a taste of potential. The very diminished return is it's transitory, and people are always wanting more, and it's not maintained and held as something that is cultivated, which is where it can be problematic for many people, because it's the honeymoon is over. It'll never be that good, and that's where people get diminished return.
But it is my own gateway into what I call the other world.
Oh yeah.
And when I'm there, I don't need to be there all the time. It's just knowing that it's there is a sort of safety valve for me, because it's like it's what Terence McKenna called the machine elves, you know, the wiring underneath the boards. And it's lovely to know it's there, because it makes me realize there's a lot more than just this narrow bandwidth of frequency that we call the three-dimensional reality.
Well, you want to tap into that.
Oh, I do all the time.
Well, I mean, that's it. When you look at, like, when I talk about physical healing, it takes a lot of people back, and they're like, that just sounds so fucking insane. I can't believe you're talking about these crazy physical things that are taking place. I'm like, yeah, that's been my experience all day, every day for over 30 years. And but what's comparative is within a psychonautic experience is always bring people back to, if you want to start to really cultivate through the method of the madness of the alchemy I use, you start with things like bending metal. And people are like, what? Like, that charge you and I are getting right now is a communion and a unification that verifies that we are at one. Picking up. What?
One of my friends regularly bends and knots up spoons and forks.
Yeah, and it's what happens is from a graduate level, I always start people out as green. You take a piece of metal, a spoon, you feel the tactile effect of the resistance against your flesh. With your attention intention, when you hook into that resonance through a method, you will start to see things wiggle and shape as if they are magnetized, which magnetism is actually opposing, which people don't understand. It pushes against the resistance in the center. It will be propelled to separate. And as you merge that, you will physically, as a psychonaut, you know what I'm talking about. You will see it move and wiggle, move and wiggle, move and wiggle, and form together as one. And that's when you hit the center point, it'll melt like butter. And this is a resonance that is cultivated. Now, flesh is no different. I always give people that if you're on the road of doing that, a human physical healing is no different than that. And that's what you experience when you start to merge with this substance.
When I'm out there doing astrology readings, I'm using a lot of mythology, because the archetypes of mythology are very useful in helping people understand their own psychology. But I've always been fascinated by the roots of mythology. So, as you may know, I'm doing this documentary on the history of Western astrology. So I'm doing it in epochal episodes. So episode 1 is sort of prehistoric through to about 700 BC. So we're looking at stone circles and calendars on bones and rocks and things like that. But when I went to Greece and I went up Mount Olympus, and I was looking at the Greek antiquity of about 700 to 200 BCE, and I was realizing what the big realization, which completely changed my worldview, was that over that 500-year period, the Greeks, they didn't look at astrology as in terms of horoscopes. They looked at the cosmos.
That's what I'm talking about, baby.
The big cycles. Whereas when the Greek Empire collapsed around about 200 BCE and the Roman Empire started less than 100 years later, and astrology jumped across the water from Greece to Rome, by the time it's in Rome, less than 100 years after the cosmological ideas of Greece, where they're looking at the big cycles, the galaxies in the cosmos, in Rome, it's like, okay, when can I have sex? When can I be emperor? And how can I make some money? It's all about me. Whereas in Greece, it's all about the big picture. And such a radical shift of consciousness in such a short space of time. But then Greece was academic and intellectual, and Rome was militaristic. So these are different empires, and astrology adapts, same as any practice or methodology. It adapts to the circumstances of the time. So, you know, at the moment, astrology in America, most astrologers in America at the moment are starting to call themselves astronomical consultants, stellar advisors, because it's becoming difficult to be an astrologer in America at the moment, just in the last few months, you understand. But America's going through some massive changes now. So,
well, you know, the proof is in the pudding. And you know, I've always used the methods that I've been taught in relation to star stepping magic within Taoism, where we use that to alter the fabric of reality. We lay down a 9-point grid in this material state, and we alter it through codes that we enter, and through that we also mirror that with the constellations and our affinity with the cosmos. So that creates the alteration. When you mention karma, yeah, karma to a Taoist is quite simple. It's the cracks in reality that we fill with the magic to commandeer whatever intention and attention we desire to create. And so what happens is the side effect is everyone becomes whole, but through that magical invocation, you will notice that everyone within that experience is whole. So it's not like, oh, well, it's a diminished return and, you know, you're just doing it for yourself. Yes, there is the intention of this, yet the aspect of it is everyone is presented this resonance. So from that, the outcome is the karma is the tool that if you are suggestible, the emotional content will bring you to a point of your own self-realization, or it will invert you, which is where most psychics, mediums, channelers, you know, they end up on my doorstep all the time because they become too inverted. Oh, I'm intuitive. I'm an empath. I'm a healer. I'm a magic man. I'm a Qigong healer. I'm a Reiki master. And they're exhausted because they literally surrender and sacrifice their life force, not understanding that the true essence of everything is that magnetism we speak of that does not require their participation.
That's why I say to people come to me and say, I'm a healer. And I go, no, you're not. I go, yes, I am. I said, no, you're not. You're a catalyst. If you're a healer, people just get addicted to you and then you can never get rid of them. But if you're a catalyst, then you come into people's lives, you empower them to heal themselves. They become empowered. The world becomes a better place. And then they don't come back because they've become empowered. So when someone says to me, I'm a healer, I try not to yawn. Much of what you've said, I could say exactly the same, but using astrological language.
Isn't it funny? We're a brother from another mother, my friend.
I can sit here and talk to someone blue in the face about how they can empower their lives. And it just goes in one ear and out the other. And then I can just kind of just step sideways inside myself and step into a flow of energy that I call, for example, Pluto energy or Uranian energy. Yeah. That's always there.
Yeah.
But just flowing alongside. I can just step into it and then somehow tune in and say exactly the right thing and then step out of it before it gets too absorbing, before I get too caught up in it. And this is how it works with working with individuals, empowering them to go away and become strong inside themselves. And to be honest, it is basic pattern recognition. You see all these wonderful horoscopes with all the signs and houses of the zodiac around it. But sometimes I just get rid of the signs and houses and I just look at the patterns that the aspects of the planets make with each other, because that is the core of a chart. And if you got the pattern right, everything else is the decoration. It just provides the areas and the timings. But the actual core is the pattern recognition in the chart. And that is why everyone is different, because no two people are born at precisely the same moment in the same place. Even identical twins will be a minute apart. There is the phenomena of astrological twins. For example, Christopher Reeve was born the same day, same year, same hour, same hospital ward as Hamill, Superman and Luke Skywalker, right? G.W. Bush was born same day, same year, same town, different hospital, and within half an hour of Sylvester Stallone. So you can see similarities with these people. Bush and Stallone are both trying to stop mad terrorists kill the world, and they both got mummy issues. And the other two were superheroes. And you see this all the time. But everyone, upbringing, heritage, ancestry, all plays a part. So you get someone come to you and go, I want to learn the way of a Tao. And they're coming from a privileged upbringing where they've got everything they've ever wanted, as opposed to someone who's been struggling in the gutter for 30 years and has really struggled to sort of find themselves, who comes to you and says, I want to learn the way of the Tao. There's going to be a different methodology for both of these people.
Unfortunately, I'm not a witness. So I break the news to them very, very clearly. This has all got to do with energy potential. So I can sit here and nurse you out of the trigger and trauma you have identified as your father not giving you 5 cookies when you were 2, or we can get down with the get down and realize the potential of everything is a thought, feeling, and emotion. Once you understand that, now you can master the resonance that is the fabric of that.
They come to me and I say, look, I'm not going to hold your hand and be empathic and compassionate. I'm going to kick your ass.
Yeah.
And, oh yeah, please more, give me more, give me more. I'll pay you more, kick me harder. And I'm like, wrong. Still, okay, whatever.
Right. I mean, this is the nature of the human condition, and that through that labyrinth, I refer to it as your Sherlock to your Watson. You find the crumbs and you go through the labyrinth of the finite mind and get out the other side to the human beingness, which is that unification. You are then mesmerized by the ascended state within a Taoist alchemy processes that cannot be fought. You will not have to do anything. It does not require your participation, because it's a resonance that is emanated from you always as you continue to cultivate it. So what happens is you create the secret, or the gateway to the secret source, which is the sentience. The empathy is the heightened state of the humanness. And when it's acquired, that superpower contributes to selflessness and servitude, which you cannot fight. That is a delivered method of training. It's not something that we're fighting the mind with, which is very infantile. It's like basement level stuff.
Absolutely. When I'm dealing with some of my more, how can I put it, mature clients, I say to them, look, these people who go with the flow, they haven't got a clue. It's not about going with the flow. It's about flowing with the go. And if you're just surfing the wave, okay, fine. But if you're actually flowing with the wave and you're putting your hand in the water to twist the path a little bit, then you're a bit more not in control, but you're consciously flowing with it, and that gives you a little bit of an influence. And I like that. I've learned a lot in this last hour, San. I've learned, actually, to my pleasure and surprise, that the flow of a Tao and the Tao and the flow of the planetary energies they're not the same at all, but they have striking similarities. And I want to explore more on this. We must do this again.
I would love that, my dear friend. I would love that. I'm very, very grateful that you spent your time with me today. I'm going to put your social sphere and interweb under this conversation, which is as an experience. And all my students, disciples, 126s, and subscribers, and you're going to go, 126, what is this, an indoctrinated cult? Actually, it's nothing more than a contemporary offering of an ancient practice. I digitalized, crystallized a method of self-realization. You hit play, you have 8 pina coladas, a full body massage of 10 days in the Bahamas, and say, how did I do that? It's all got to do with your own humanness and your neurology meeting the ancient sound, and in a visual and audible experience, creating a kinesthetic response. Amen to that. It's not a cult, so you're not involved in that, my dear friend.
Beautiful.
So
okay. I'm going to have to go because I've got an event to organise. Shifts happen. And I've got a documentary to finish recording. So
one last question. What's your definition of spiritual consciousness?
Most humans like to think of themselves as centered and balanced. But there are two extremes of behavior. One at the very top of the head, which goes beyond thought, beyond intellect, and has to do with your own link with the divine. But the alternative is the opposite, and that is the area 6 inches below the navel. And that is not intuition, which many people think it is. It is animal instinct. And to be able to blend the instinct with one's higher consciousness, I suggest brings oneself closer to the divine and creates the potential for a spiritual acceleration of evolution. And that is what we as a species are about to be embarking on in this next couple of years. So in other words, trust your instincts.
Amen to that, brother.
Cool.
And so I want to thank you. I've never had the same answer. I've had over 400 podcasts, and as it should not, because we're all facets of the diamond of perfection, and it's all consciousness. Gravy, baby. Gravy. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you. I want to thank you. I want to thank the universe for bringing you into my life. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. I am your humble servant and seafood, Taoist Master San Qing, and there will be a part 2. I'm going to hold you to that, brother.
There will.
Thank you. And
Catch you
we'll talk to you soon.